Hello, guys and gals, me Mutahar, and it's Conspiracy Hour with me, ladies and gentlemen. You guys like flying? You know, if you're one of those people that say, no, I don't like sitting in a pressurized tube, hoping that my plane takes off and lands, well, I've flown enough where I have a simple saying, okay? If God wants to call me home, I'm going home. That's pretty much what it comes down to, and the existential crisis just ends up going away. It's why I'm not really that scared of things like nuclear war, for instance. Bro, if a missile drops right now and blows my entire city, well, that's just finito, boys. That's how it's supposed to be. Because you bet your ass I don't want to be living in the post-apocalypse, dog, with that Mad Max crazy cannibal stuff going on. Now, Boeing, the Boeing company, is an American multinational corporation that designs, manufactures, and sells airplanes for the consumer sector. And when it comes to the military guys, they get rockets, satellites, and missiles. So yeah, they're an American defense contractor, okay? Yeah, they have a civilian division, but they are a military complex, okay? They are a defense contractor for the United States. And by the way, they are the fourth largest defense contractor based on 2022 revenue. So to understand, ladies and gentlemen, one of the reasons we're talking about Boeing so much is because a couple of weeks ago, I did talk about this company in regards to a whistleblower. And that whistleblower, John Barnett, for instance, actually ended up dying. Now, John Barnett's situation became an international conspiracy, and it had some weight to it because the people around his life had started to not believe that his entire affliction was entirely self-inflicted. They didn't believe that this person necessarily wanted to take their own life, especially when they were so close to bringing out the actual searchlight onto Boeing themselves for their various corner cutting, as some would call it. Now, obviously, the conspiracy here is people would allege that maybe Boeing was involved, but that's a pretty heavy accusation to make towards anyone or any company. And it's definitely something that obviously a lot of conspiracy theorists have sort of brought up. You'll find it all the way throughout Reddit, all the way to the Chan board, so to speak. But some of the things that I was reading on about this too really kind of paints a picture of why things end in such a drastic manner. Obviously, if you looked at Barnett's history in this situation, it kind of all really began even all the way as back as 2012, when Barnett had actually, according to a lawsuit in the situation, said that upper management ignored various complaints and had told him to stop documenting them. And as a result of his persistence, Barnett said he was demoted in June 2013 and removed from management due to his unethical behavior. Now again, whether the validity of that claim is something that comes out after a case or something is settled, but this is not a situation that started a week ago, a month ago, a year ago. In fact, this started a long time ago, almost a decade ago at this point if we're to go by this time frame. And through that, obviously the amount of grinding down that can happen to an individual who is basically going up against one of the largest defense contractors on the planet, it is not a case that one would think they could win. And even if you feel like you're at the close end of it, obviously as age comes down and as time goes on and the health of family members surrounding you starts to ail as well, I feel like a lot of these things can really end up putting a very, very bad mindset into any individual. I don't think many people are capable of being strong enough to almost survive that. So really, to me, I think of this as unfortunately a lot of bad compounding into causing this. And even if that's the case, right, even if that's the most logical solution to this, it still ultimately paints Boeing in an incredibly evil picture. For instead of focusing on their costs and focusing on their, instead of focusing on the safety and well-being and taking actual legitimate criticisms from people that they hire, instead driving them into the ground where they, I guess, allegedly are in the mindset that they are before they commit the ultimate final, decision, so to speak. Now, of course, we all can meme around and say Agent 47 is going overtime, but while this situation was shady in of itself, the problem actually exacerbated in the last couple weeks when another whistleblower ended up dead. So, for anybody that doesn't know, Joshua Dean, a 45-year-old former quality auditor at Boeing's supplier, Spirit Aerosystems, alleged that managers failed to act on manufacturing defects of the 737 MAX airplane that they had. So, how did Joshua Dean, a 45-year-old whistleblower for this company, end up dying? Well, apparently they got multiple diagnoses according to NBC, where they got the flu, pneumonia, and something known as MRSA. So what is MRSA? According to the Center of Disease Control, it's methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus. Okay, that's a big set of words right there. And unlike my father, I did not go to medical school. This is actually a type of bacteria found on people's skin. Staph bacteria are usually harmless, but they can cause serious infections that can lead to sepsis or death. You know, I had an appendix pulled out of me, and I was like 1 day away from sepsis. That is a bad way to die, okay? That is a terrible way to go. But of course, looking into this situation, what they said is staph infections, including those caused by MRSA, can spread in hospitals, other healthcare facilities, and in communities where you live, work, or go to school. Now, the problem with this whole situation, too, is reading further, individuals involved with them basically said that this was the first time ever in a hospital for Dean, and he didn't even have a doctor because he was never sick. And unfortunately, this rules out the whole idea of if he had great health and whatnot. The problem is, and it gets really weird, is the doctor said he had never seen anything like it before in his life. His lungs were just totally gummed up and like a mesh over them. And of course, when they were like, hey, we're not sure of what he died, we know that he had a bunch of viruses, but you know, we don't know if somebody did something to him or did he just really get sick. So the question here to kind of really ask is the timing is super duper odd. You know, this is somebody that apparently seems to live a pretty healthy lifestyle. And then unfortunately, they all of a sudden they develop how many viruses in their system, and they're basically put on life support machines and effectively at death's door before finally crossing it. And this is one thing that is actually quite shocking. We won't really know what's happened to him. You could have probably gotten something. MRSA, for instance, does revolve around, again, resistance to actual bacteria. Like, there are actually problems with treating this because what happens is when you have resistance bacteria, right, antibiotics that you would typically use are just not functioning, according to at least the government of the UK, okay, Anti-Direct. Where again, they say MRSA is a type of bacteria that's resistant to a number of widely used antibiotics. This means the infections can be more difficult to treat than other infections. And again, some of these infections can unfortunately be life-threatening. But we won't know what's happened until, of course, months after. And who knows what's going on with Boeing as this situation keeps, growing. The attorney said he was a healthy individual who ate well and exercised. So it just seems odd that he went so fast. Dean had been sick for 2 weeks and had been struggling to breathe, forcing him to be put on a ventilator. So again, it's really weird now that another person ended up actually passing away involved in this Boeing conspiracy and this Boeing whistleblowing situation. Now, since then, in about a day ago, more and more Boeing planes are having more and more issues. So for instance, this footage you're seeing over here from CTV is a Boeing 737 skidding off of a runway and catching fire at a Senegalese airport. In fact, it's a situation where 10 individuals ended up getting injured, and as far as my knowledge goes, for now, thankfully, no one has died. Now, here's the thing about airplanes, okay? They are actually very expensive and complicated to make. As you can imagine, you are making a pressurized tube that flies hundreds of miles an hour through the air at any given moment. So I want to start off by saying I hate the term corner cutting, okay? I actually don't think that Boeing engineers go out of their way to purposefully design planes that do not function, okay? Speaking as somebody that is an engineer, and obviously engineering comes in very much different ways and shapes and sizes. A computer engineer is far different than an aerospace engineer, and nobody is denying that. But the people that work on these projects, the people that work on these products, especially products like a plane, where it becomes a life and death situation, I really don't believe engineers are going out of their way to purposefully make bad product. However, I do think bad product stems from actual executives and businessmen who want to make the most money as possible while cutting as many corners as they can. And this is a situation where the FAA and the SEC are now investigating Boeing after a pretty alarming actual thing that's been mentioned. So some workers in the South Carolina plant have actually said that Boeing could have falsified the inspection records for the 787. So the FAA basically said that it launched an investigation where workers at a South Carolina plant were reported that to have falsified inspection records. Boeing said its engineers have determined that misconduct did not create an immediate safety of flight issues. After receiving the report, we quickly reviewed the matter and learned that several people had been violating company policies by not performing a required test, but recording the work as having been completed. Dog, you can't be doing that. You know, here's the thing. You might be wondering, do I have to test every product, okay? You know, in the computer world, yeah, you sometimes you do. You got to test as much, especially expensive product, especially products you know that you're not making a whole lot of. Dog, these people are making aircraft, okay? Human beings are supposed to be sitting in this. You can't have a situation where tests are not being done properly. You have to be testing. So here the SEC is jumping in and they're checking whether the workers are completing required inspections and unfortunately, if there's possible falsification of those aircraft records.
And you know what's insane too? It's like the actual thing comes apparently from a memo that USA Today ended up getting, where apparently they were actually addressing the issues right over here. But basically the FAA is investigating whether Boeing completed the inspections and whether company employees may have falsified aircraft records. At the same time, they're re-inspecting all 787s still within the production system, and now they gotta figure out a plan for what's in service at the moment, meaning shit that's flying through the air right now. So the insane part about this is, like, if this is true, right? Like, imagine if this is true. The person falsifying those records needs to be charged with fucking attempted murder, brother. You cannot be skipping testing on, again, stuff this sensitive, all right? Or falsifying records in general. It's insane that this can actually happen, and there's still no oversight that regularly checks this kind of stuff.
Now, for now, the FAA hasn't told people to stop jumping onto all those 787 planes yet, but there is an actual inspection that is supposed to be taking place, and hopefully it comes back pretty goddamn awesome. But of course, for every extra thing that's being tossed around, there are other issues. For instance, another Boeing 787 a day ago makes an emergency landing in Iqaluit, which is a territory of Canada, because of a heat smell in the cabin. So here they said a plane traveling from Paris to Seattle was forced to make an emergency landing after there was a heat smell in the cabin during a flight. And what brand was it? It was a goddamn 787. It had to actually divert and land just to make sure the 260 people on board were actually going to be alive. And while they said that the airline, the company involved, Air France, actually did their technical checks, it didn't even provide information on what caused the smell. So maybe it could be something that's serious. Maybe it could be something that isn't. But to give you an idea, they have to land the plane because, again, even if it's the smallest issue in the world, you are obviously flying hundreds of people and their livelihoods, their life is in your hands. Now, what do we get for the price of 2 dead whistleblowers? We actually have 10 safe and sound whistleblowers. So after Joshua Dean and John Barnett have passed away, trying to speak out against this actual aircraft company, this defense contractor, 10 more individuals have shown up to actually whistleblow on this situation. Now, I want to preface for legal reasons. Obviously, the Agent 47 meme is just a meme and a joke. I don't believe that Boeing has hitmen going around getting rid of the whistleblower speaking out against them, okay? There is no complete 100% proof for that. There's only 2 dead whistleblowers, okay, on one company. That's the only weird situation right now. But of course, to come back to it, there have been 10 individuals that have come out and they're raising concern. And according to the legal team, there are just 10 other whistleblowers that are out there, and hopefully that number keeps actually growing. Because here's the thing, if there is leadership at the company that is possibly allowing the fact that, you know, inspections don't have to be completed or actual corners are being cut for the sake of increasing share prices, making more money at the cost of sacrificing human lives, that shit needs to stop. And to be honest with you, I think any leadership that's involved in cutting corners on these planes should absolutely be going to life in prison, especially since there are actually people that, again, here's the thing, if one person dies at the expense of somebody trying to save a buck or increase a share price, that person should, in fact, in my opinion, be charged with murder, okay? Without their shitty involvement and trying to restrict and trying to up their money game, they have put people into harm's way, okay? Anytime I sit on a Boeing plane, especially one that is under one of these risky models, I do believe that there is a chance that I'm probably not going to make it, okay? I'm probably going to have to suffer some serious trauma if God forbid something happens to that plane. And it shouldn't even be that way, okay? It should really be a situation where these things are designed to be as safe as possible, okay? Look, last time I covered this, I made a mistake where I talked about, airlines are generally more safer than driving, okay? There is a bit of a metric difference, okay? Obviously, there are a lot more vehicles on the road. And one of my mentions for that was when you're in a plane, pilots in general are far more trained. It's definitely harder to fly in the air than it is to drive a vehicle. But obviously there is, a big difference in the amount of numbers that are in the air versus those that are in the road. There's a lot of key changes. It's not that air travel, from my understanding, should necessarily be far safer than road travel, but air travel, especially when it comes to the actual machines we're driving, should be safe 100%. Okay, these things are expensive to purchase. Dude, companies shell out hundreds of millions of dollars for some of the biggest jumbo jets out there. The fact that we're cheapening out on producing these is insanity. And the fact that people are speaking out about this, are dying mysteriously in some cases, is actually very alarming. And it's one of those things where, like, if we want to talk about conspiracy theories, this is about as legitimate as a spooky fucking conspiracy theory can actually be. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, Boeing is a scary company. And some would say they're evil. Some would say that they believe the Agent 47 conspiracies. But I just want to see how this situation ends. And honestly, I want this to end in the best possible way. It is scary as fuck to see people dying in the process. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, if you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. This situation just keeps blowing up. Quite literally, no pun intended. I am out.